And welcome to Across the Desk. This week, we're going to talk about our Oklahoma governor, Kevin Stitt, and what he's been doing in office here lately, and some of the crazy and just kooky things he's been doing. Because, we have a governor who claims to not be a lawyer or be a politician, but yet he's in our government looking over laws and creating policy, or failing to create policy. Anyway, here we go with a continuation of shows I'm doing on Stitt, where we're just like, oh Stitt, what the hell's he doing now? Well, here we are. We have our derpy governor, Kevin Stitt, who really, like I said, isn't a lawyer, so he doesn't know anything about law. And he's not a politician, so he really doesn't know anything about policy. But yet, here we are. And it shows that he really isn't a politician or a lawyer. Nah, man, he really isn't. He really isn't those things. So this is what he's standing on, and this is what we get when you have somebody who doesn't understand policy and doesn't understand law. So we have this guy in our government, and this is what we get. Because right now, the policies out there are no mask mandates. He won't show any leadership of any kind. He wants to pass that buck down to municipalities. So we have roughly 20 municipalities who put in a mask mandate. Well, the rest of Oklahoma really hasn't done that. And when you look at the map for the COVID numbers, well, yeah, you see a lot of orange and red in there. And when you look at everything else compared to the rest of the nation, we're like third or fourth when it comes to the amount of COVID infections per 100,000 people. It's horrible. We're running out of hospital space. Some places have already run out of ICU beds, and they're sending people to Kansas City and Dallas because we haven't done anything here, because we have a derpy governor who doesn't understand law, policy, and let's not get into science. I mean, the guy's totally an anti-vaxxer, doesn't understand science. If he can't see it, it don't exist kind of thing. COVID's a hoaxy deal, so he just kind of doesn't care about that stuff. And it shows. It shows in his demeanor. It shows in a lot of different ways. So we have a governor who doesn't know what he's doing and trying to hide the fact of that. That's why, the White House put out a report that was supposed to be disseminated to counties and cities, and you know what Kevin Stitt did with it? He didn't disseminate it. Why? Why did he not disseminate something from the White House? I mean, these are people in his own party, right? You'd think he would be, oh yeah, here, let me pass this out to you guys so you can do stuff that's going to be in line with our party, with our principles, and with our White House that we have and are in control of. No, he didn't do that. You know why? Because there was things in that report that goes against what he thinks and goes against what he said in public. So it kind of makes him look bad. So instead of getting that out to everybody so we can use it, he just didn't hand it out to nobody. And the thing was, this didn't just make Democrats mad. It made Republicans mad. Even the mayor of Tulsa was thrown under the bus by our governor, and when that happened, that Tulsa mayor was like, oh no, let me get this straight. I never got anything from them on anything the White House said. We never got any recommendations or anything. Why? Well, because Kevin Stitt is a derp, and he doesn't want you to know that. So he would go so far for you not to know that he would put lives at risk, just so that he can make himself look good. This is the kind of governor we have here in Oklahoma. He doesn't really care about you. He cares about two things: money and power. He really likes power more, because right now he's probably got enough money, but it's that power that he's really pining for. And I'm going to tell you, it's addictive, and he's getting addicted. You can see it. You can see it on how he governs. You can see it on how he doesn't govern. And that's what we get with our governor here in Oklahoma, with Mr. Kevin Stitt. Now, here we go. Another thing about Kevin Stitt, I mean, you just can't trust the guy. The guy has no principles. The guy has lacking of morals. He has no convictions. So here we go. He came out, made an executive order right after he was elected that says, you know what, we're going to ban lobbying firms from being able to work with administrative officials or anything else on anything else, right? So no paid lobbyists can work for us. No, I'm going to sign this executive order. Guess what happens 18 months later? You know what he did? He hired a lobbyist to figure out for advice on federal COVID funds. He hired a lobbying group for this. And here's the deal. The lobbying group, they're not even from Oklahoma. They're D.C. based. They're called Capital Ventures Government Relations, LLC. And he paid them $14,000 in May and June from money that came from the state share of federal CARES Act spending. And that's the first payment. I don't think that's all he's paid him either. But anyway, he paid this lobbying group to help figure out how we're going to spend federal COVID fundings. And this is, 18 months after he signed an executive order saying we can't do that. So this goes in with Kevin Stitt's principles, or really lack thereof, that he can't stand on any. Because here he is, coming out, man, we're not going to do this lobbying stuff, but yet, you know what, I guess those rules don't work for him, so he's going to bend them. He's going to change them because that doesn't work. But here we go. Really, you know what it is? It makes it look that way. It doesn't it? It makes it look like he's so wishy-washy. He's flip-flopping, and he did. He flip-flopped. But you know why he flip-flopped? Do you know why? I said it earlier in the show. Because he doesn't understand politics. He doesn't understand policy, and he doesn't know anything about law. So here you go. He made an executive order without understanding anything of law or politics, because he's not a lawyer and he's not a politician. So this is what you get. You get a derpy executive order, and then 18 months later he rescinds it because he realizes, oh, hey, that was probably good policy. But you know what? He's only figuring that out now because he's not a lawyer and he's not a politician. And another thing about Kevin Stitt. A little while back, we know that Kevin Stitt had a little bit of conflicts with the Native American tribes here in Oklahoma, and it really hasn't gone that well for him. He's lost several cases in the federal courts when it comes to Native American sovereignty and what they can do with their casinos. Here we are, almost 2 years out from when that contract was supposed to be out, and he said, oh, we're not going to renew. And yet they're still paying those same percentages, and he can't get any kind of deal with them. He's lost this one. They've buried it. No one talks about it anymore, and you don't hear about it because Kevin Stitt is a loser. He lost as big as Custer did in his last stand, and it was a total wipeout. He doesn't have anything. Even those 2 tribes that signed the contracts, the federal government decided, man, you don't have that authority to do that. You don't. I'm sorry. They're null and void. So he's at zero. He's at square one. Actually, he's not even there. He doesn't even have any allies left when it comes to going after the native tribes and their casino money. None. He lost that battle square and fair and right out. He got his butt handed to him. So we don't hear about it because the news media here in Oklahoma, well, they're pretty pro-right and Republican. So that's what you're going to get. And it's one of the reasons why I do this show for Oklahoma, is because this gives you a different view on political commentary from a guy who has a different point of view. Here in Oklahoma, born and raised Oklahoman, 5th and 4th generation Oklahoman, that's me. I'm a very big part of this state, just like not Kevin Stitt, who is that? That's Inhofe. Yeah, that guy. Inhofe, who wants to claim that Democrats aren't Oklahomans. You know what I'm saying? Because he, hates the freedom of those he disagrees with. But Kevin Stitt's a different character, and we want to get back on that subject. So here we go. Kevin Stitt. He got his butt handed to him when it comes to fighting the Native American tribes in Oklahoma. Not only did he lose that battle, he lost a lot. Not only did he lose that battle when it came to casinos, he lost territory. A third of the state is now regarded as tribal land. So out of all this, he's lost ground. He started the attack. He came out. Man, they kicked his butt, and then they kept going. So now, the northeastern half of Oklahoma, that's Native American land controlled by Cherokees, and so are the other Native 5 civilized tribes in their territories. So it kind of messed it up. So here we go. Kevin Stitt goes to the White House and says, man, please, I give you guys a bunch of money as a good plutocrat that I am. So can you please give me the power over their EPA and environmental protections? So that's what he did. So Kevin Stitt now has the authority of environmental policy when it comes to tribal land. Well, you know what? This really made a lot of sovereign nation citizens and their leadership kind of angry. So they're not keen on Stitt right now. But you know what? I know they're not keen on Stitt, but I know a lot of these Native American tribes and tribal members and members of the Daniel tribe members, like people in the Cherokee delegation, Cherokee tribe. They have their own government, right? Well, people in that government, they're fairly conservative, and they voted for Stitt. And guess what they're going to do? Guess what they're going to do next time? I guarantee it. They'll vote for him again, even though that Stitt tried to screw him over, right? Stitt tried to really put one over on him, but guess what? They'll vote for him again. You watch. You watch. Actually, you watch this show, because after the next election, he's up in 2 years. So it'll be 2 years. And when I do a show in 2 years, we're going to see how many of those Native American leaders voted for Stitt after he tried to screw him over. I bet it's quite a few. Because like I said, here in Oklahoma especially, politics is tribal. They won't dare vote for a Democrat at all, no matter if that Democrat was really a Republican who just changed his political affiliation so they could run against somebody else. Because that's what people do. And others have done it, like Joan Farr. Joan Farr's running for the U.S. Senate as an independent against Inhofe. Well, you know what? She used to be registered as a Republican. Though she says she's been an independent for 11 years. Wait a minute. I've been an independent for 11 years, and if I get elected as your senator, well, I'm going to switch back to Republican. Really? Okay. So that's what you get. But you know what? They would vote for her because she's got an R after her name. The only reason she doesn't do it now is because she didn't want to primary Inhofe. She knows she'd lose. But if I go in as an independent, I can get on the ballot. And that's what it's all about. But regardless, here we are, Kevin Stitt, trying to stick it to the sovereign native tribes once again on taking control and the power of environmental policy on tribal land. And because, he's kind of whiny about losing so much to the native tribes that are here in Oklahoma. It's really made him look bad. And try to find a story on it. You won't find too many. There's some, but especially on the local news channels and everything else, you'll hardly find anything about Kevin Stitt when it comes to how bad he got his butt handed to him by the native tribes here in Oklahoma. And now for the last bit of derpiness of our Oklahoma governor, Kevin Stitt, we come to what he's doing with some COVID money. So he's going to take $25 million of federal COVID money, and he's going to send it to Stillwater so they can create the Pandemic Center for Innovation and Excellence. Yeah, that's what he's going to do with it. Now here's the funny thing about that. One, most of our health departments and everything else are really located near the Capitol, and they're located near each other for a reason, so they can easily communicate, even though in this digital age, sometimes, live samples and everything else, they really need that physical stuff, and you can't really just send that over the email. So, you got what we got here. You would think that OU Medical Center would be a good spot for something like that. No, wait, you know what? They actually do have something like that. They do have something like that there at OU Medical Center. So you're kind of wondering, why wouldn't Kevin Stitt try to build upon that? It might even be cheaper. Well, it goes into a lot more than that. I'm sure, one, he's getting $25 million he can throw around, so he's going to make sure that his kleptocratic buddies get a piece of that pie. And that's what we got. So the contractors he's going to use in Stillwater, the people he's set up in Stillwater, and everything else, they're going to get this money. Because that's how it works. And that's how he's going to play it. Because Kevin likes that power. And having that money gives him the power. And it gives him influence over his kleptocratic buddies who want that money. So he's going to be more than happy to do what they tell him to get it to him. So, hey, we're going to send a pandemic center over to Stillwater instead of putting it by the Capitol. Or use OU Medical Center to do it, because, well, you know what? That's just not where his buddies are. And it's you got people that are out there, medical professionals, everybody else, they're scratching their heads over this, going, why is he doing it like this? It makes no sense. So he didn't listen to anybody. He didn't listen to any experts. Just got his gut and his lobby team, I guess, and his buddies that want that $25 million. So that's why we're getting a pandemic center in Stillwater instead of OU Medical Center, which is a lot closer to our health departments and everything else when it comes to the state and the state capitol, over by OU Medical Center. So that's what you get with Kevin Stitt right here. So why is he doing that? Well, I just kind of explained it a little, but I think it goes into more than that. So a little bit more of it is, like I said, Kevin Stitt comes out and proudly says, I'm not a lawyer and I'm not a politician, And that's the reason why. Right there, that's why we're getting this kind of policy. Because you know what? Not a politician. So why would he know anything about policy? So we're going to get this. It's going to waste a bunch of our money that we got from federal government to go for COVID stuff that we could use for other things with COVID. But that's not how Kevin Stitt sees it. He doesn't see it like that at all. Because policy and law, he doesn't know anything about them. It's kind of reminds me of Peter Griffin in a way, our derpy governor. Because here you go, Peter Griffin, he could get away with doing stupid stuff because, it's Peter Griffin. He doesn't know anything, doesn't know any better. He's just an idiot, so he can get away with that. And that's kind of what we got with Kevin Stitt. He doesn't know anything. He doesn't know anything about politics. He doesn't know anything about policy. He doesn't know anything about law. He doesn't know anything about lawyering. So we're going to get derpy policies that really don't do anything for Oklahoma, waste a bunch of money, waste a bunch of time, and not improve our state whatsoever. Because when you have a guy who doesn't understand things like policy and law, we get a state that's fourth in the nation when it comes to cases of COVID per 100,000 people. You get things like no mask mandate policies because he lacks the leadership ability to implement that on a statewide level. He'd rather kick that can down the road and let local municipalities take care of that because he really just doesn't understand it, doesn't want to take the time to understand it, and really doesn't care to understand it. He's got his plank, he's sticking with it, and boy, are we really suffering because of it. Stitt, man, what are you doing? Seriously, this is what we got to live with here in Oklahoma. A guy who's hiring lobbyists when he said he wouldn't because, he realizes that, that was bad policy. And here he goes, going to spend $25 million of COVID money to his kleptocratic buddies because, that's what he wants to do. And not passing around anything from the White House sent because it makes him look bad because he's not a politician or a lawyer. Well, it's just what we have with our governor here in Oklahoma. And really, until somebody gets in there that knows law and knows policy, Oklahoma is not going to be a top 40 state, much less a top 10. So that's what we got. And until people wise up, figure that out, start electing leaders who actually know law and actually know how policy works, we're not going to get there. It's just not going to happen. Well, that's my show this week. It's Across the Desk with Kid Fairchild. And we'll see you next week.